Okay, the last graph that we're going to look at being able to create is a circle or a pie graph. With a circle or a pie graph, you're going to divide a circle into sectors. And each sector is going to represent a different category. The area of each sector is going to be proportional to the frequency of that category. It is typical that you're going to show the breakdown of a whole unit to its parts when you use a circle graph. And typically you use pie graphs or circle graphs when you're using qualitative data. So we're going to look at an example and how to create a graph with this example. So I have some information on marital status. So we have people who have never been married. We have married people. We have widowed people. And we have divorced people. The number of people never married is 55. The number married is 127. The number widowed is 13. And the number divorced is 22. So the first thing we would need to do is to add up our frequencies there. And that total turns out to be 217 in our study. Now, when we're making a pie graph, we need to figure out a percentage because that's one of the things that you represent in your graph. So that's the first thing that we're going to do. We're going to find the percentage of the frequency to the total. So in order to do that, we do the frequency divided by the total to give us that percent. So on that first one, we get 25.3%. On the next one, we get 58.5%. On the next one, we get 5.99, so we're going to round that to 6%. And then we get 10.1%. Now, as a check here, we're going to add up these percents, and the percents should add up to 100. And we get 99.9, and that's very close to 100. If we were off by more than that, I would say we need to go back and look at some of the rounding. If we were over 100, maybe 100.1, that would be close enough. But again, if you're off too much, you need to go back and look at your rounding as you look at that. The next thing we need to compute is the angle that we're going to use in our graph. So in order to look at our angle, remember that in a circle we use 360 degrees. So we're going to take this percentage and multiply times 360 in order to figure out how much the angle would be for each sector. So the 25.3% times 360 is going to give us an angle of 91 degrees. The next one gives us an angle of 210.6. I'll make 211 degrees. The next one is 21.6, so we're going to use 22 degrees. And the last one is 36.3, so we're just going to use 36 degrees. And again, we're going to make a check there with our angles. And we come out to be 360 degrees, right on the money there. And again, you can't have more than 360 degrees in your circle. Now, I don't have a protractor or a compass to draw a perfect circle, but you should use that when you're dealing with creating your graph so that you have a nice, smooth circle being created. And you should have your point in your center exactly. And using your protractor, then you would draw your first side. And using your protractor, you would actually measure your angles out. You shouldn't use just spotting. You should actually measure these angles out. Now with a 91 degrees, we know 91 degrees is very near a right angle, so I can pretty much draw that one in. Pretty close. And instead of the angle degrees, we need to put the percentage in, 25.3%. The next one, the 211, I think I'm going to save for last. So I'm going to use the 22 degrees. And that one goes with our 6%. The 36 degrees goes with the 10.1%. And then what's left should represent our big one, which it should be more than half of the circle for that 58.5%. Again, with all other graphs, we should always have a title. We should include labels. So going back through and putting my labels in, I should have never married, or widowed, or divorced, and then are married. So a good graph is always going to have those labels included, those percentages, the title. With pie graphs, you're going to see them colored quite a bit. One of the drawbacks or misleading things that you often see with pie graphs is people trying to do them in 3 dimensionals, and sometimes they get very blown out of proportion when you do the 3 dimensionals with pie graphs. So I would caution you with 3-dimensional graphs with the pie graphs, but you do see that quite often. But that is a quick overview of how to create a pie graph. We looked at the percentages, we looked at how to find the angles, using a protractor and a compass to draw this much neater than I did here, but you have the gist of what you need to do in terms of creating that particular kind of graph.